Oh, he's going to Twin Pines Mall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like, it just looks like what a mall looks
I
like back
know.
then.
Except they got the Just Rained movie match.
Yeah, the hose down the street. That was such a cliche. It was like Last Action Hero pointed out the cliche. They kind of like, they kind of comment on it. And then after that, it like, kind of disappeared. Like you didn't really see it so much anymore. I don't know if that was like, okay, we've reached the end of like the hosing down the street. Because it adds depth, it adds like extra light. Now you have like twice as much light because you have the reflected,
It looks so good. Like I was just out before you came, like hosing my own driveway for the to give it like the movie look.
So in case you're wondering what we're talking about Back to the Future.
Yeah.
On today's Total Recall. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli.
You can follow me on Instagram at cinema_tomb.
And you can follow the show on Twitter at Total Recall Show and on Instagram at Total_Recall_show.
Back to the Future, one of the cornerstone 80s flicks.
Yeah, it's about time we cover it. It's about time.
It's about time. I've seen this movie so many times. It never gets old. Like,
it's funny because it's got like all these like great bits and all these bits that sort of set up other bits that like start give the joke and then you get the punchline or you get the echo, and then as the series progresses they become these motifs. So every time you watch it, it is like like Groundhog Day or something. You're kind of reliving the same stuff over and over.
I love it, and they get you're right. They get a lot of entree out of these like setups, and even in like the sequels, they were like one of the they might have been the first. I'm not sure, but they filmed the second and third like back to back.
Yeah.
So you were getting in Back to the Future 2 like setups for the next movie already. They were teasing it out and stuff.
Yeah, which is kind of smart. They kind of figured out that they could okay, we're going to have 3 of these so we can structure it. It was successful enough, like we know we could do 3, no problem. Even if the second one, way underperforms, we're still like in good shape. That was like the Back to the Future was like the first instance I'd ever heard of like filming 2 movies back to back. But I guess that was the Superman and Superman 2 were filmed back to back, and the plan was to completely film them back to back, finish filming Superman 2 before Superman 1 even comes out. They got close, but schedules were getting tight. They decided to just not. They did like 3/4 of Superman 2, and then that was like the first time somebody set out to do that. Maybe I'm thinking maybe it was another Salkind project. Maybe the 3 Musketeers and the 4 Musketeers. Maybe those were filmed back to back. I'm not. For some reason, that seems to be sticking in my head as a possibility.
You're right. We did mention that with our in our Superman episode.
Yeah.
But this one, because I remember, they even left in the little ending teaser. Like when you watch Back to the Future 2, it's like it's coming summer '90, Back to the Future 3, and they even had like clips already from it. So it's like a little commercial for it.
Yeah. It's like, hey, if you're able to do that, do it. And so now it's like kind of just a matter of course that you assume there's going to be sequels to things, and they can kind of go in there with that expectation.
Zemeckis and Bob Gale, like the creators, they have a pretty solid control over the series. Like, not a lot of stuff can happen, I don't think, with it without their like blessing.
That's probably why we haven't seen like any further sequels, any remakes, because I would think this would be, they've kind of like remade and done modern day sequels to like pretty much every like 80s property, and it's kind of shocking that there hasn't been anything with it. This one that's so, this is a movie that's like as popular now as it was when it came out.
Yeah, and that's why we haven't seen these, because they're kind of precious with like the property. Mm-hmm. And we still got the Back to the Future, the ride at Universal, which I've never rode before.
You have the wonderful Back to the Future NES game.
Oh my gosh, how did I forget that? That was like one of the first NES games we ever had. Yeah, I think that was an LJN special.
Yeah.
And my God, you're right. I don't remember Marty doing a lot of bowling in this movie. Like
That was a cut scene.
the cutscene. Marty's driving around on his skateboard, rolling his bowling ball down the street. What
They had to figure out like 50s things to put in that game. Yeah, I think I played that game for all of 2 minutes. Like it did not make a big impression on me.
Yeah, like the same with Jaws too.
Yeah, the LJN, like in retrospect, was like sort of famous for, and it kind of started off the bad rap that licensed games got. I let me amend that. It was probably E.T. started the bad rap that licensed games get.
They kept the torch burning.
You think about this movie. Like this is the script is one that like has been studied. It's like one of the textbook cases of like how to structure something, and it sort of follows all the rules of screenwriting, like Chekhov's gun and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like they have this. It's like a very heady sci-fi concept, like sort of multiple sci-fi concepts you have to do, but it doesn't feel dry. Like the character, it's like they have very relatable characters, very like sort of grounded in the modern day, like in very grounded in 1985, very like these sort of comedic types and like easy to swallow, and somewhat amped up but still naturalistic, and then. But then you have this super sci-fi story, and so it's like they figure out a way to kind of get across all this complicated information and numbers and dates. November 5th, 1955. They have to like figure out how to,
Yeah, like America was able to swallow this like insane, like a movie where like they have a flux capacitor powering a DeLorean back in time.
Yeah, but it just like
it works.
Yeah, it's like each step. It's like all these small steps. And then before you know it, you're in Wonderland,
Everything about you, as you break the movie down even smaller, like every choice they made was perfect.
Yeah.
Like 88 miles per hour. I just love of course that's amazing. The time 10:04 p.m. like 1.21 gigawatts. Like it's like
yeah,
everything.
Flux capacitor.
Flux capacitor.
Like, it just it felt very like believable that all this crazy stuff could happen.
And then the DeLorean, the choice of using the DeLorean. I think I think there's a lot of product placement in this movie. I love a good product placement. You know me, but they tried to get I think Ford tried to get the time machine to be a muscle car or something like fancy car, and Bob Gale was like, Doc Brown doesn't drive like he wouldn't drive that car. So
yeah, DeLorean was a great choice, and it's like, we were just kids, so it's like when we saw the DeLorean, like if you were older, you'd see the DeLorean and then you'd like laugh. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's that silly car that stinks or whatever. But like we didn't know that, so okay, this looks like the coolest car ever made. It's got doors that go up like this,
And I was playing with the toy
The mask, yeah, exactly.
And Mac Tracker's car had the gull wings,
yeah.
So I'm like, just as cool. I was like,
right, exactly. Like this, it's like, oh wow, the doors go up, and you can imagine, oh maybe the doors going up are what help it fly, and then with mask that became the doors going up become the wings on Matt Tracker's car. And speaking of mask, like initially Eric Stoltz was going to play Marty McFly, and they had filmed like a bunch of scenes with them already.
They did. This was like insane. They filmed, I think, over a month. Like he was deep. They were deep into this this movie when they pulled the plug on Stoltz, and they said he was bringing like more serious. Like he looked like kind of like almost a stud, kind of. Where like Michael J. Fox has this like one of a kind like energy and like scampiness and like
who knows what the real story is. I mean, that's what I heard, that he played it like very straight, that he was playing it very serious, and they wanted like a bouncier kind of like sitcom energy. And I think if I'm remembering it correctly, the story was that Michael J. Fox was like their first choice.
Yeah.
But he wasn't available because of the TV show Family Ties, and then they got Eric Stoltz, and then some things happened, and then he suddenly Michael J. Fox suddenly became available. So that seems more likely to me that it was that like this movie would have worked and would have worked perfectly well and done all the things it needed to do were Eric Stoltz in that role.
Yeah.
But they wanted Michael J. Fox. They knew what it would be with Michael J. Fox, and so they got him. But I don't think it was anything like, oh, Eric Stoltz wasn't doing the trick or what. Like I think he could have pulled it off. No problem. Of course, a different energy, but I think
Stoltz could have delivered the goods.
Yeah, so I don't quite buy that.
I'm a Stoltz fan.
Yeah.
I'm a Stoltz back. Rocky Dennis.
Yeah.
He's like, he's like, sunshine on my, or what's he said? Like, what I heard the real reason they fired Stoltz is because he kept showing up to set with his Rocky Dennis makeup on.
Wait, that was makeup? That's not what Eric Stoltz really looks like.
He's like, Doc, and his head's like triple the size.
I'm thinking this is probably also like the first time I had ever heard of plutonium.
Oh yeah, this is the first time. Yeah.
Maybe the first time I heard of like terrorism.
Yeah, the Libyans. I don't know how they found me. They did.
Probably not the first time I heard of Libya because I remember all the like Gaddafi jokes from the 80s.
I remember them from the Naked Gun movie.
Okay, yeah.
Because in Back to the Future 2, they had the...
So you saw Naked Gun before you saw Back to the Future?
You know what? I think I saw Back to the Future first.
Okay, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Man, that mall looks exactly like the mall I went to when I was a kid.
Same here. It's like, when I watch it, I think it's Westmoreland Mall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like, for me, it's Neshaminy Mall. But yeah, I guess that was like the template for malls across the country.
Yeah, big, robust lot.
Yeah.
You got that classic JCPenney storefront. Plenty of room. Like when I'm driving around the mall, it always creeps into my head. It's like, oh, maybe this is where I can get it up to 88 miles per hour.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, like all these numbers, and then it just like they set it up in sort of a funny, interesting way, and then they're in your head. Now, of course, like we've seen this movie, yeah, like I said, countless times since then. But like, I remember first time I saw it, getting it.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like, I don't understand what's going on. They pull out the bazooka. I mean, come on, that's so much fun stuff. So over the top, and like you don't even realize it's over the top because you do get there by increments.
And you're right when you talk about studying the screenplay. Just in those opening minutes where they're scanning over the clocks, they lay so much pipe and set up so much stuff. It's like. In the 80s, I love a good newscast delivering exposition.
Yeah.
They're like, plutonium was stolen from the... Well, this is where they think he's a space alien.
Yeah, it's sort of like Americana. He like lands in this... He crashes into this barn that's, straight out of the Saturday Evening Post. He has radiation suit and they think he's an alien and he tells George McFly that he's Darth Vader. And like an old EC comic, like an EC style comic. And yeah, the DeLorean. Like again, they had to, for this scene to work, you have to pick a car that looks like it's from the future.
And now there are like, I swore I saw pictures of like Elon Musk's like Cybertruck. Doesn't it look kind of like jaggedy edges and like DeLorean-ish kind of like?
Yeah. Which again, I mean, could be sort of deliberate design choices. I mean, design history is such a big part of design. So.
They're like, we gotta do a tribute.
Yeah, and some of this great like backlighting.
Oh,
which is what do they call that when lighting is like part of I forget what it's called.
Me too.
Incidental lighting, or when light, it's like okay, it's obviously light from the headlights.
Our
Buckshot. Buckshot plays into the trilogy because it's like he shoots at Marty with buckshot, and then like in part 3 he's eating the turkey or whatever with buckshot in it.
That is one of the scenes I think about the most from the whole trilogy is him spitting those BBs out in part 3. I don't know why. Like
I think about that a lot too. You're right. I think because it like taps into like just like a very like common thing of like eating food and worrying that there's going to be something in it, and then kind of and also like realizing that like you have this idea of what the past was like, but then the reality of it is always like more disgusting and gross and nasty.
Same with their like rusty water he was drinking too. The cinematographer for this is our man Dean Cundy, who did Halloween. He was like John Carpenter's DP. So the
cinematography choices kind of establish this difference. Like feeling like the 50s versus the 80s. And so this 50s stuff, like my dad took us to see this movie, and it's like, so for him, all the 50s stuff, it was like nostalgia, and it's like, oh yeah, this is what it was like, when I was a kid, and and
I think about it because 55 is the year my mom was born.
okay.
So I'm like, and she was born in October, so I'm like, well, he was here a month after my mom was only like a month old when Marty McFly.
It is funny, like, thinking, because, like, the 50s at this point is, like, so far distant. Like the idea of, like, moms and dads taking their kids to see a movie about the time period that they grew up in, where I guess now it would be, like, moms and dads taking their kids to watch a movie about the 90s.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. It's like, Dad, what's grunge music?
Well, I guess 1985 to 1955, that's 30 years. So, 2021... 30 years is 1991. So
oh,
like,
man.
So that's like if the remake came out tomorrow, it would be Marty McFly in 2021 going back in time to 1991. Whoa, which that was kind of like when we saw Captain Marvel. That's what it was. It's because it's like I kept seeing commercials for Captain Marvel, and I knew it was going to have like a retro portion. There was going to be some she was going to be in the past or whatever it was going to be, and in my mind, I thought, oh, it's going to be the 70s.
Yeah.
It's going to be the 70s, and Samuel Jackson's going to have like a big fro, like the fro that he was supposed to have in Pulp Fiction, but then the wardrobe department like got the wrong wig. They got a Jerry curl wig instead of an Afro wig.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a little bit of cinema history.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino wanted an Afro, and costuming brought a Jerry curl wig. So like, okay, we'll make this work. But so I was picturing that it was going to be in the 70s, sort of like the era of like like the original Shaft, and then Samuel Jackson played Shaft in the remake. So I'm like, okay, but then like you watch the movie and it's like, oh, the 90s, oh, the far distant past that they go back to is the 90s, and it's like, oh yeah, I guess that does make sense. It makes sense in the same way that going back to the 50s makes sense here, but it was a little jarring that the retro sections are taking place in the 90s.
I know that hurts.
Yeah,
that hurts.
Touché.
And also a great choice using the universal backlot here.
Yes.
I like having it gives us a defined space that we can keep that you can just recognize, like a little just area that you can just keep calling back on. And
changing. Yeah, and I think it was they were going for the Mickey Rooney, Andy Hardy movies, and maybe this is even the same set, the same lot or whatever that they filmed those, but where it's small town America, and just having it on a movie set kind of makes it work. When
he was in the 80s, in 1985, Hill Valley Square, I was looking real hard at the storefronts, and apparently it was supposed to be I'm like, what is this? Times Square in the 80s? There's porno theaters right along the
because it was it was orgy American style.
I wasn't looking that close.
Yeah, which I guess that's a play on Love American Style, and then Love American Style is the anthology show where Happy Days first premiered. Happy Days started on Love American Style, and then became its own show, and back when this movie came out, Happy Days was the touchstone for 50s. If you want anything about the 50s, it was you watched Happy Days, and that was as a kid, that was the gateway to the 50s. That was my understanding of the 50s. Came from that, and Happy Days, and then maybe a little bit of the movie Grease.
This and Happy Days, I was seeing them around interchangeable.
Right.
There was a deleted scene where Doc was like, Marty, you're not there. He's like, the 2:00 showing of Orgy American Style gets out soon. I'll be back. He's like,
yeah, because it's I guess that's to show this sort of fall from grace that happened between the 50s and now, and the 80s are so apocalyptic compared to the 50s, and and even the high school kind of illustrates that with all the graffiti on it and stuff. Then when they do Back to the Future 2, then it's okay, we're really gonna do a dystopia.
Yeah, when I was watching, I'm like, what are they holding? Sturgis motorcycle rally in Hill Valley Square.
My dad, when we saw this movie, him saying that it was pretty spot on. He wasn't oh, the 50s were nothing. He felt that this was pretty spot on. And watching watching this again, the 80s portion I feel is pretty spot on too. As somebody who lived through the 80s, like that's pretty much what it was.
Yeah, like Pepsi Free is like it wasn't really that wasn't it was little, so like that came in when I didn't really know about that.
Yeah, Pepsi Free. Yeah, that I don't know what somebody would make of that joke.
He's got the Walkman. That was probably like high tech at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like that might as well be from the future, which.
Lorraine was named after, I think Sidney Sheinberg. He was like the head of Universal. His wife was Lorraine Gray, Chief Brody's wife in Jaws.
Okay.
So that's where they got the name.
And then Marty was like this, famous movie in the 50s starring Ernest Borgnine, and it was kind of like about it was about a loser, like this guy who's like a loser. So it's kind of like, and I'm sure if we knew the 50s better, we'd probably catch more of them, but it's probably chock full of 50s references that like our parents would have been like, oh, there's that. But so Marty is like one of them. So it could just be like sort of this reference, and maybe also because like his dad's a loser, and like if things don't go right, he might end up a loser too. But it also might make sense in story because like Marty was a very popular movie too, and probably would have been popular for like a nerd, like a prototype nerd like George McFly. So it might make sense that he would like name him after his favorite movie or something.
We're still on that train too. I'm picking up what you're putting down. Maybe if you saw Jason the Argonauts, he names his son Jason too.
Right. Yeah. Here's like the scene, where he meets his mom and she, but of course doesn't recognize him.
I was actually looking for trying to find those purple Calvin on eBay. I was going to bid on a pair, but for some reason there was a skin mark. So I didn't do the buy now option on it.
That was in the condition skid mark.
It said they use that in the description.
See, watching it now, are they purple or are they pink? They're looking pretty close, or like magenta.
Oh, for years I always thought they were like a violet. Well, I'm just gonna have to get out my tie dyes, dye my hands purple.
In the TV show Glow.
Oh, I haven't watched that.
Okay,
I can't wait.
In Glow, like Mark Maron is sort of this like failed movie director or whatever, and he becomes like the director of like the Glow TV show. But he has this like script for this like very like intellectual independent movie that he's gonna make, and it's about a guy who goes back in time, and there's like Oedipal themes in it. He goes back in time, and his mother falls in love with them, and it's the very like angsty kind of thing. And then like later in the series, he's like telling somebody about this script he's working on. They're like, oh yeah, I just saw that movie. It's called Back to the Future.
I thought you were gonna say he has he's like I was thinking about this flux capacitor.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's funny. I need to watch that show. That's a Netflix show, I think.
Yeah, it's real good. And then there's the big brother from Wonder Years. It plays.
Oh yeah.
Of the kids. Yeah. What was it? Wayne.
Wayne on Wonder Years.
Yeah.
And for okay, that guy. If I would have seen him, I'd stay away from him because I think he's the meanest guy you've ever been around.
He was a pretty big bully.
What a big bully! Stay away from Wayne. Great performance, but don't come around here.
What's a rerun? Like they're watching. He's like, I sort of took it. I fell for all this stuff hook, line, and sinker. So it was like, I guess there weren't reruns back then. I guess there were only because what could they rerun?
Yeah,
there were. Or the TV was pretty new.
Or the two TVs in the house. They're like, he's just fooling with you.
Yeah.
Nobody has two televisions.
Mm-hmm. Like having the TV on while you eat. Like what did you think of it? Because like to me that like the idea of having like the TV on at the dinner table with you while you eat it's like obscene. Like it's an obscene idea to me. But like I've met some people who that is like part of their life is having but like to me that was kind of like horrifying. And I guess maybe it's part of like, oh, this was when TV was new and it was exciting, so people did this. But I don't like did that register for you at all? Or?
Just like the TV is just always on.
Yeah.
Even in the background. But I see what you mean. The setup, like that shot, like
where
right between the antenna.
Yeah, like the TV is like the guest of honor at dinner.
I see how they. I see how they're shooting that. They mentioned his life preserver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that coat, that was like a pretty, that was a pretty snazzy coat back then. You see that same coat in American Werewolf in London.
Oh yeah, those puffier the better.
Yeah. And in like an old Daredevil comic from like 1987, or maybe it was concurrent with this. Maybe it was 1985, but an old Daredevil comic, Daredevil Born Again. He's like going around in one of those, and it is kind of like, here's some cutting edge modern fashion in a superhero comic.
That vest, we had that around our house when I was little. Like,
yeah, we had those too. And you know where else you'd see a more slimmed down version of that on Mork and Mindy. Like the opening credits, Mork is wearing one of those, like a blue one.
I'm gonna go with a vest / jean jacket double combo. That contraption on Doc Brown's head. When I was little, not last week or the week before, or anything, I would put a strainer on your head, colander on your head, and was that in Ghostbusters?
I think you're right. Yeah, and I think that was like a reference to like some old. There was like one of those old 50s, flying saucer kind of movies where like somebody had like a colander on, with like B movie kind of thing.
I would put one on there. Yeah.
Future Boy. Did you watch Taxi? Because it was it did not dawn on me that this was like the same guy from Taxi.
Didn't dawn on me either.
Is Reverend Jim from Taxi.
I would see that it would be on
two
TV.
Totally different colors have hair. How could they be the same?
Christopher Lloyd could be anywhere from 40 to 70. I can.
He doesn't look that much different now.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And I know he had age makeup in the 80s scenes. Then here he doesn't he's still got the same color hair, but he doesn't have the wrinkles. And I think that's one of the jokes. And even there's the scene in Back to the Future 2 where he's like, I got plastic surgery, and then he takes off his mask
it's
and he's
the same
identical.
Guy.
Yeah.
For 50 years he was anywhere between 35 and 70. It's like what can't pin his age down. Once again, when I was younger, the shows that I would just see on the TV, Dear John with Judd Hirsch was just
was he on? Oh no, yeah, Judd Hirsch was on Taxi, and and Dear John,
and then Taxi itself, and then I would blow my mind. Tony Danza was on Taxi.
Tony Danza was on Taxi. Also played Tony,
and I would blow my mind. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And then
the Tony verse.
The Tony verse. Eat your heart out, MCU. That's my Tony. Yeah, Andy Kaufman running around on there.
Mm-hmm.
Got DeVito.
Yeah, I mean, what an ensemble! Every member of the ensemble is a huge star.
Huge star. Yeah. This and then another Zemeckis movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I would see those were my Taxi on in the background. This and Who Framed
another
Roger
Christopher
Rabbit.
Lloyd. Yeah.
Another Zemeckis too.
Yeah, Zemeckis. Zemeckis. When this movie came out, they keep saying, a Steven Spielberg production. So I assumed this is a Steven Spielberg. Okay, E.T. I assumed this was another Steven Spielberg, and then it wasn't until later on that Robert Zemeckis. But you think about Zemeckis's track record and some of the biggest Forrest Gump and Castaway.
Yeah.
Every just really memorable movie that kind of defined a period of time. It's there he is.
There he is, right there, and
but it was kind of okay, yeah, here's, we wish we could tell you that Steven Spielberg directed this. He didn't, he wasn't available. He produced it. We got his friend Robert Zemeckis, but meanwhile,
trust us. If we could have had Spielberg helming this, we would. But we don't think we didn't try.
And I think that was before, for a while that thing a so-and-so production, a Steven Spielberg production and stuff. There was a period where you'd sort of fall for that and be oh, it's a Steven Spielberg movie, because you didn't quite understand, and then it's you get a little more into the minutia, and it's oh, a product. Okay, that's the guy who's sort of over here, but the guy who's direct, auteur theory and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he has his
1.21 gigawatts.
Great Scott.
Great Scott. Yeah, Great Scott that's what Superman would say, and Zemeckis and Gale said a lot of the thinking about time travel and like alternate realities and parallel universes and stuff sort of came from like reading Superman comics when they were kids, where they'd have like, you know, Superman of Earth 1, Superman of Earth 2, and you'd have, you know.
Did Bob Gale, did he do comics too?
That sounds right. I mean, I know that there are like Back to the Future comics now that Bob Gale
I'd love
wrote.
to check some of those out. I love that Save the Clock Tower fly.
Yeah, it's like, you know, like time travel stories are really cool when you can like sort of, you know, really do a science to them and figure out, okay, this bit, and so yeah, he's walking around with that thing in his pocket. Again, it becomes like a clue that helps them get him, you know, back to the future. I remember seeing the commercial. I remember seeing the title for this, Back to the Future. What does that even mean? Because you don't go back to the future, you go forward to the future, you go back to the past. And then seeing the commercial, and he's like, "We'll get you back to the future." And I was like, "Oh, I get it. He's going back to the future." You know,
when I was little, I was trying. It was like even right now, my brain, it don't work too good. All right, I'm smart.
The guys who made this movie, they're so dumb. Don't they know you go back to the past? You don't go back to the future. How dumb could they be?
I could, like, I was like, Back to the Future. Oh, he just looked right at us.
He broke the fourth wall. Future boy.
I think once again that Sidney Sheinberg, the Universal guy, gave him a note on like the title. He's like, I don't like Back to the Future. He's like, you should call it like the kid from Pluto or something. Mm-hmm. And then they were worried about like, how are they gonna like tell him they don't like that idea without him getting pissed off? So Spielberg like intervened and said like, we got your message. Very funny. All the boys all laughed. It's like, keep them coming and stuff like that. So,
that's a good one.
So he knew
his brother's pictures disappeared. It's Wendy Jo Sperber plays his sister. She was on Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks.
She looks so familiar.
Yeah,
is that where?
Yeah, and then she was on something else.
Yeah, Peter Scolari.
Yeah, right.
They're enrolling Marty in the school here.
Mm-hmm. Now this Doc Brown's outfit here with like the hat and stuff, that would become, like by the 90s, that would become a very like popular look. That would be, you know.
Oh yeah.
The sort of like swingers kind of, you know.
I love
hey baby doll, like that kind of outfit. Oh, and okay, George McFly, Crispin Glover, he's like the prototype nerd. Like this is after Revenge of the Nerds, right? Or was this before Revenge of the Nerds? I mean, but he seems like he's straight
after.
Yeah, he seems like he's like straight out of Revenge of the Nerds. It's like we've established this like nerd archetype.
Yeah.
And here he is.
There he is again. He's got the pocket protector.
Yeah. The glasses, the haircut, the laugh, the kind of, you know, the posture.
Did we see his glasses with? Did it have? I swear I saw some tape holding it together.
Right, the tape. Yeah, the bad haircut. The sort of flinchy kind of like, you know, ready to get hit at a moment's notice. Crispin Glover was like he was kind of like an idol to me for a while, like kind of like an aspirational figure. Like when I found out about the real Crispin Glover, because it's like he's like one kind of nerd in this, and then he's kind of like he was kind of like another kind of nerd in real life, and it was kind of like geek chic, like an early instance of geek chic.
He like I think he like lives in like a castle or something.
Yeah, right. I remember like because it was like when I was a kid, I read like some article about him, and he had like a diseased eyeball collection. And so, wow, this guy's so awesome. He's so weird, and he owns it. You know, he owns his weirdness.
And his dad was Bruce Glover from. He was like a henchman in like one of the James Bonds. I think it was Diamonds Are Forever.
Okay, like the famous David Letterman appearance. Yeah.
Oh yeah, did he? Is that where he? Did he? Am I imagining this? Did he shatter a table or something or break?
I forget. Like I don't think he like broke anything, but he was just doing like karate kicks and stuff, and like he kicked like just like a couple inches away from David Letterman's head or something, and then like Letterman just like kicked him off the show, and then like the audience was like booing or something, and then he says to the audience like, "Why don't you try going to dinner with him?" Okay, you know, if you think he's so great, you go have dinner with him. You know,
that's in the Awkward Talk Show Hall of Fame, right along with the Burt Reynolds, Mark Summers.
Anytime it gets violent, like, and he was being real about twitching, like he was being real. Like he's like he was just kind of bouncing off the walls and leading up to that. It's not like look at my muscle, look at my and does a big karate kick.
He's great in Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. He does his iconic dance in that. I'll have to show you the little clip from that.
Well, the story about him was that like he weirded himself out of Hollywood or whatever, like that like I don't know, he was being weird with the producers of the makers of this movie didn't want anything to do with him because I guess he was being a weirdo, and then him on Letterman, it was kind of like, oh, I don't want to work with that guy, like that guy. So I don't know how it worked. He's not in Back to the Future 2 or 3.
No, he's not, and they used his likeness a lot in the second one, and I think there was like a lawsuit.
Yeah, he sued and won.
Yeah, it changed. It was like
because you wouldn't know he wasn't in those movies. It's and you talk about likenesses. There's a lot of stuff about using my digital likeness and all that kind of stuff now. But it was like you can't create a plaster cast of Crispin Glover's face and put it in a movie.
Yeah, he rightfully won. Like for all intents and purposes, he's in Back.
Yeah, I would have never known he wasn't in it.
And then there was a part because they were trying to get him into Back to the Future 2, like, for real. There's a part where he's, like, hanging upside down.
Yeah.
And
so it made it, like, easier to disguise that it wasn't him by having him upside down.
I heard they were trying to punish him. Like, if he did agree to it, he would have to film the movie, like, hanging upside down from,
right, yeah, trying to come up with ways to make it. I thought it was, like, to kind of, like, disguise, like, okay, let's turn him upside down, that'll help disguise him a little, so you won't tell that it's not him.
Giving us a hard time with the contract signing, Crispin? Well, you're going to shoot this movie from inside Iron Maiden or whatever.
And I guess, that sort of dictated the choices for what the story of the sequel was going to be, because from what I understand, the initial idea for the sequel, he was going to be much more involved. Like his character was going to be in the story a lot more, because it would have been like a true sequel where it's like, let's bring back the old gang, But they kind of had to go into it like, we don't know if Crispin's going to be in this or not, so let's just George McFly's dead. With George McFly's dead, and that's going to be our starting point.
Oh, God.
He was dead for a little bit in an alternate universe.
Shot by that son of a bitch, Biff.
Biff, just one of the legendary villains, and you think about all the different screen villains, but a guy who erases you from existence and tries to assault your mom, attempts to assault your mom and then tries to erase you and your whole family out of existence, kills your father. Who's a worse villain in cinema?
Bullies you across eons.
Yeah, bullies you. Today we have a much better understanding of bullying and how it works and the mechanisms of it and the way it can sort of hide itself or camouflage itself. And in this movie, it does, it pretty much tells you it tells it like it is, and sort of spots a bully and shows you what a bully is, that it's they hide behind jokes, they pretend they're joking, but it's all intimidation. And you just see it's just very well studied. You see the sort of manipulation and psychological warfare or whatever.
And to that Tom Wilson, the guy that I think his name's Tom Wilson, that plays Biff. In all the interviews I've seen with him, he seems like the nicest guy ever. So it's what a good performance.
Yeah, that was always the interviews with Robert Englund. Freddy Krueger would always be how nice he is. And this was another thing I remember my dad noting of because there's the Texaco gas station in the 80s, and then you see the Texaco gas station in this, and a bunch of guys come running out in their outfits and attend to your car, and it's my dad's saying yeah, that's how it was back then.
When we still had the full service gas stations around,
sure, yeah,
I'd be in the car and then I'd see the guy pumping the gas, and he would have this huge wad of cash in his pocket, and I'd be like, that guy's
living the life.
I'm so it would be a bulging out wad of cash.
Crispin's got his shirt, he needs to tuck in his shirt tail.
Milk, slide it down.
Yeah, he's
chocolate.
Milk, chocolate. It just takes one sip. How he stays thin. He orders chocolate milk and just takes one sip.
I love the joke in part 3 where Doc Brown's depressed, so he drinks one shot and passes out. He's like, Darth Vader from planet Vulcan came down.
George McFly, like like Marty knows his dad has it in him, and he's just like, his eternal disappointment with his father is that he like can't stand up to Biff. He can't, but he I believe in you, Dad. I know you can do it. And he's coaching him. This is like, there's like wish fulfillment in this movie where it's like, you wish you could like everybody wishes they could like customize their parents.
Yeah.
Like, oh, if only my parents were more like this or that. Like, it's kind of like a universal thing. Like our parents felt that way about their parents, and and that's the wish fulfillment that happens here. He gets to sort of like customize his parents, turn his dad more the way he wants his dad to be.
He's like, more testicular fortitude.
That's Calvin Klein. He's a dream. I feel like in the trailer, like in the commercial, she says he's an absolute dream.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
That's like in Twister, the trailer. There's a tire that goes through the window. I'm like, I was so bummed out that I like stood up in the theater in Twister. I was like, where is that tire?
Yeah, somebody was telling me that like there was a scene in the trailer for The Sixth Sense that like when he saw the trailer, he was like, oh, the guy's a ghost. And then like that scene wasn't in the movie when the movie came. It was like there was a scene in the trailer where like a car like almost hits Bruce Willis. It's like, hey, what are you doing? He yells at the car. Oh, he's an absolute dream. So she does say it. Okay. Yeah, that was in the trailer. He's an absolute dream.
Absolute dream.
But yeah, a car almost hits Bruce Willis, and so then this guy was saying he saw that trailer, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, obviously Bruce Willis is a ghost, obviously, and then the movie comes out, and then that scene. So you have a spoiler in the trailer that doesn't end up being part of the movie.
That's amazing.
So we got some skateboard play here.
Oh my god!
And skateboards were just the coolest back then,
Dude, I was.
And he invents the skateboard.
I was obsessed with it. And also, like early on, Marty McFly also invented skitching, where you like. I remember there was like I swear there was a Sega game called Skitchin', where the whole plot was where you like grab onto the back of cars and stuff. So anytime I see him doing that, I'm like, oh my god, Marty McFly's invented skitching.
I think my dad had to explain that was poop. That
Same with my parents. Yeah. I'm like, what?
Because it just looks like dirt and hay. Oh, like that's bad enough. Oh, some dirt and hay. But it's like poop. Okay, cool.
And then he's eating it. Oh,
it's on his lips.
The weird thing was the one version he's like, I love horse shit or something like that. They're like, you know what? He should not like this.
Yeah, I'm getting to like this.
There's a couple of drafts where he's like
that becomes like an ongoing thing through the trilogy. Where he's just got like that's how Biff developed his taste for feces. That's where it all started.
He's like, he's like, you know what? This is really growing on me.
Wasn't all that peanut brittle? Wasn't that like peanut brittle that they like bought from Biff? Like he had to, like Biff's kids were selling peanut brittle or something. Was that?
Yeah, there was like a deleted scene or something where George bought all this peanut brittle.
Okay, yeah, right. Because I see him like dumping out all the peanut brittle. So it's like without that scene, you're just kind of like, oh, these people are such losers. They can't even cook a decent dinner for themselves. They're eating peanut brittle for dinner, or that. George McFly is such a dork. He eats peanut brittle for dinner. But it's like, yeah, it was like, yeah, Biff made him buy all this peanut. It was like his kids, little league team or something.
He's like, I got 60 pounds of peanut brittle. Yeah, but and he's like, why would I eat anything else?
Also, love like a good like model or something.
I know.
A model.
Great looking models. I also like in action movies when like in Rambo he's got like stones making up. He's like, this is the fortress. I love anytime like,
and all this stuff like this. I could see how this could have felt like sort of heavy-handed exposition, but it's all just kind of woven in there. And
yeah, it just happens so naturally.
And it fits his character too, his sort of like, eccentric.
Yeah, Doc Brown seems like somebody who would build a model of this.
And this is like another like 50s type, is sort of like the wacky inventor and the kid, who, is like, gee whiz, Doc, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
I think that's like, there's that Adventures of Rick and Morty.
Yeah,
Which I think that it's supposed to be Doc and Marty.
I haven't watched
haven't
Rick
watched
and
it
Morty, but when I see like pictures of I guess I don't know which one's Rick and which one's Morty. But
I'm assuming Morty is Marty.
Oh,
and Rick
is,
with Emmett,
because he's like, yeah, he's got the lab coat on.
Now see, all through this movie, it's like Cyrano de Bergerac, or like he's trying to give his dad the lines to win Lorraine over, and he's like, every time he tries to build up George with Lorraine, it fails, and instead she ends up liking him more. So he's trying to kind of put out the fire with his mom, but she
won't let up. I hope that bid comes through on those purple Calvin Kleins. There's one knock against a giant skid mark in the back.
It kind of fits the story. Like skid marks are a part of this movie, with like those flaming skid marks from the
if you're leaving
car.
Flaming skid marks, you're in big trouble.
I would think that if you were making like commemorative Back to the Future Calvin Kleins, you'd want like skid marks in it with like some flames. It seems like that would be part of the deal. It's
like I went blind. I was trying to dye my hands purple to do, and the ink splashed up in my eyes.
These clothes that they're wearing, like those pockets and stuff, like that's like what my grandfather would wear. Like as a kid, in the 80s or whatever, my dad would be. My grandfather would be wearing those. So he got his, that was probably the last time he went clothes shopping was in the 50s, and just kind of.
Oh, we love it. Like my Noni had, was wearing bell bottoms up until she was in her 90s.
What Lorraine in the 80s is wearing was sort of more like a grandmother outfit than a mom, which I think was supposed to make her seem like even more kind of like failed and fallen and sad and unfortunate. It's like she's kind of wearing these clothes that are like, out of style and too old even for her, wearing these like horrible,
Well, I love Noni's. She had the green thing, I loved your outfits still.
I mean, those outfits are, they would be like a great fashion statement now, but like the 70s were so fresh in the 80s that it was like, there was just like revulsion for 70s fashion at this period. Like, just wait you just have to wait a couple more years. Like by the 90s, 70s fashion makes a big comeback, but like at this point it was too soon for the 70s to make a comeback.
They want their ties smaller.
Yeah.
Get those lapels in.
Like 50s was far enough back that it's like, okay, let's bring back the 50s. And when I was a kid, that was like, we had 50s Day at school. And again, all we knew was like Happy Days. So it was like 50s Day. So everybody's like dressed up like the Fonz and keeping like a comb in their back pocket and rolling up the sleeves. And stuff.
Dude, I had the, do you have the switch? You ever have like a switchblade?
Yeah, of course, the switchblade comb, yeah. Oh yeah, the first time I saw that, it was like the coolest thing. And I fell for it too, where it's like, whoa, what is that? And then
it pops out.
For like talent shows at school and stuff, that was always a big girls wearing like the poodle skirt, and guys being like Elvis or the 50s was such a big thing in the 80s.
I was in the musical Grease in school. We were still obsessing over that.
Yeah, I think we did Greased, like in a summer camp talent show, we did Greased Lightning. Like we did the song for Grease, and like we had like a big like cardboard version of like the Greased Lightning. Like we didn't do it wasn't a production of like the whole of Grease, but we did just that one song.
There was
And that one, I'm like doing the twist.
Yeah, I was
whatever.
like a background. I was just like
I was just like off to this. I mean, my parents like. The way they talked about it was that I was like the star of the show.
I'm just
I was like Elvis or something, but I was just like
one funny thing happened. There was this guy who was supposed to get he's supposed to get shanked Like he was standing stage center, and a guy was supposed to come by while he was like standing like this, like pull his pants down, which is already like.
Now that's part of the show, or this was like a thing that the kids came up with?
It was weird because this was like the alley behind, like hours. It wasn't even during the.
Now even like the Marvin Berry thing, that's a good setup too, because like Marvin Berry, it becomes like part of the plot, but it's like you just see the drum set Marvin Berry, and it's like you don't even think anything, and then later on when Marty McFly's doing the duck walk and doing all the Chuck Berry moves, and he's like, Chuck, this is your cousin Marvin, and it's like, but then they hit you, Marvin Berry.
Marty McFly influences Chuck Berry as well when he installs toilet cam.
Allegedly, is Chuck Berry still alive? Allegedly,
I don't even know. He influenced him in more ways than one.
It's interesting because like it's the '80s, and it's like Huey Lewis tells him, "You're too darn loud." So his stuff's he's too darn loud for like the administration in the '80s. But like if the kids at the school dance got to hear it, they would have been blown away. But then he goes back in time, and he sort of does like the history of rock and roll, and he does the Chuck Berry, and they're into it, they're ready for it, because like a year from now or whatever, it's going to be the big thing. So he's like right on. But then he gets into like the '60s. He starts doing the Who stuff where he's like smashing stuff.
Does the Pete Townsend? Does he do windmills?
Yeah, the windmill and stuff. And it's like now they're not quite sure, and then he goes into like.
Van Halen,
Van Halen, like '80s guitar god kind of stuff, and then they're just not ready for that yet.
Yeah, he's like he starts he lights it on fire. Mm-hmm. Eddie Van Halen played those licks that you hear, custom licks that he plays into George's ears for it.
Oh, okay, awesome. Like Eddie Van Halen, like he just like loved playing the guitar so much. He was like huge with his own thing going, but then you could like call him up and he'd come in for a session just for, on Beat It with Michael Jackson.
The great guitar solo.
Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know about that for this. That's really cool bit of information.
Get your damn hands off her.
And yeah, this is the key scene. This is like, Greek tragedy, the story of Oedipus.
She's like, why were you setting up those toilet cams earlier? And why was Marvin calling Chuck and telling him about that?
Chuck, this is your cousin Marvin. Marvin, Mary, we'll get a load of this.
Remember that idea that you were toying with? He's like, we'll get a load of this. Chuck's like, that's brilliant.
Lorraine is like, desperately like in love with Marty McFly, and who's her son. She doesn't know it because he hasn't been born yet, but she's like incredible, and even like almost like orgasmic or whatever. Like there's scenes where she's looking at him and she's kind of like, like there's something going on. Like she's really getting worked up, and then she kisses him, and then it's like the incest taboo or whatever. Like it's like biological. She's like, whoa, this is
like
gross.
Kissing my brother.
And it's if the Buick's
a rockin', don't come a knockin'.
Yeah, this is a great scene too. Like you really feel it in this scene because it's like this is where George is. This is where like the villain is doing his absolute worst. His
also
villainy. Yeah.
Why? They got their house and everything later in life, and they're have a great life. Why are they keeping like a rapist around, like detailing their cars?
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that I wonder. Like, and then George stands up, and then he does punch out Biff, and it's like one of those it's like a Jackie Chan punch or something where like they show it multiple times from multiple angles, and it's like a cosmic punch. The way that Lorraine kissing Marty and being like grossed out, that's like a cosmic, like this cosmic gross out, that like somehow she's in touch with like the larger cosmos and realizes this is wrong. And in this, it's like this is like a cosmic punch where it's like this is a punch that's gonna like change the history of the world and like change the space-time continuum.
You're so right, like a Jackie Chan level like blast.
And you can see like George McFly is horrified, and you could see him kind of running, but then he does like that. Then it's like the hero.
You're right.
Yeah.
Then there's like an end, and during the end credits, there's like a blooper where he gets like they show like Jackie Chan like almost dying, like in the end.
And it's cool. Like George McFly had to do this without Marty. Like Marty was, kind of like Merlin or whatever, and George is like Arthur. Like Merlin says, like, oh yeah, go over there and do this. But then Marty like isn't there to kind of like make sure it all happens the way it's supposed to happen. And George like rises to the occasion and does it like without Marty's help, and sort of like earns the love of the princess or whatever in the sort of narrative.
Yeah, Marty. Yeah, he had to do it on his own.
Who is that guy? But yeah, that's an interesting point you bring up about Biff, because I do wonder, when Biff's like, hey, say hi to your mom for me. Like, did a version of that happen in like the original timeline where, did Biff rape or sexually assault or whatever? Like, did Biff rape Lorraine, and Marty and George McFly walked in on it, and then Biff said, take a hike, and then he took a hike. Like, did that happen in the original? I would guess no. I would guess that scene is sort of like a result of the changes to the space-time continuum, and that the humiliation that Biff experienced with the shit landing on him, which didn't happen in the original timeline, that kind of like led to an escalation that kind of leads to that scene, where the bully is really becomes incensed and brings his bullying to a criminal level.
We talked about Biff being like one of the ultimate shitheads in like all of cinema.
Yeah.
It even enhances it in Back to the Future 2 when, how like it in the future where Biff is like, oh yeah, he's like anything you want. Well, but then in Back to the Future 2, that even his like, anything for you, Mr. McFly, is like a put on. Like he never learned, like he's like, it's like even that is an act that he's still like the same shithead.
Yeah, which is sort of true to life, and I get like we have a better understanding of these things now, but that like Biff is like a bully, he is like a sociopath or a narcissist or whatever, and so as a narcissist, if he's around someone he views as his better, he will sort of scrape and claw and beg and kneel and whatever. But then if he's around somebody he views as his inferior, then like the bully comes out. So like, George McFly sort of showed him who's boss. Like George McFly punched him, and from then on, and all it takes is one punch, and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, like realized, okay, so George McFly, got to be careful around George McFly. Okay, cool. But then it's like, yeah, then I'll be a jerk to people who I'm not cowering around. It's like so true. Like it's so well observed, and just I don't know that like the language and the understanding of these kind of personality types was as good back then. So I think like to the credit of the writers of this movie, they kind of these were things they recognized or intuited that maybe they didn't have like the language for, but they got it and captured it.
I like when he's like Blues and B, watch me for the changes and try to keep up.
Because that's how music works.
I'm like, I can't see the changes, Marty.
And that was like a nice little touch too at the dance, where like this sort of like secondary bully out of left field comes in and starts threatening things, and it's like, oh no, and it's like George McFly had to sort of confirm. Yeah, he's like, no, I am on this new path. I'm on this different path. My life's on a different. I'm not, I'm not taking anybody's shit anymore. Yeah, Marvin and the Barytones. See, yeah, he's going to run for class president. So things are already going good. And man, how great is the first time you saw this movie and like the ending, he goes back and like he expects to find things as he left them, but like now it's like, his dad's super cool and he's an author and and his brother and sister are have their big careers. Going. It is like this. It's like the 80s thing. It's the same in Ghostbusters and stuff where like, success and like victory or whatever is like equated with sort of monetary and status, and, you know.
They're playing tennis.
As opposed to like a movie in the 70s or whatever, where it's like you can have, you know, like Rocky or something, where you have like these like spiritual victories or you know, moral victories, where it's like okay, I don't have a pot to piss in, but I can hang my head high because I, you know, did this thing or that, you know, contrasting Rocky 1 with like Rocky 3, which is like firmly, like Rocky 1 is in the 70s, Rocky 3 is firmly in the 80s, and he's just like, you know, he's rich, he's famous, win.
Rocky 4, he's got the robot from, it's like, happy birthday, Polly. Hey, it's your robot, Polly. Hey, happy birthday, Polly.
This is like Icarus, like he flew too close to the sun with his Van Halen licks.
He's like,
you're weird.
You're weird. You're gonna love Yngwie Malmsteen.
And then this kind of solidifies, like, okay, Lorraine is definitely over her Marty McFly, because like Marty is like the weirdo now, you know. Like George is the cool guy, and Marty is the weirdo with the interesting music.
He was trying to play Steve Vai's guitar licks from the Eat 'Em and Smile David Lee Roth album.
And then he says the thing about like go easy on your son when he like sets something on fire.
It was Marvin Berry and the Starlighters.
Marvin Berry and the Starlighters, okay.
Remember when you were talking about setting up those toilet cams around it? Well, get a load of this. This new guy, Marty. Yeah, right outside that door is the other Marty waiting just around the corner.
Yeah, it's really fun. I guess like when he goes back to the future, when he goes back to 1985, and George McFly's like an author now, and he gets like the box of his book.
God.
Such a great moment, and like I've talked to other like comics creators about this too, but like the first time when you get the box with your comics that you made in it, you know, I felt, you know, like I remembered back to the Future, like I thought like, oh, this is like in Back to the Future, and I've talked to other comics creators who like it was the exact same thing, where it's like, this is like Back to the Future, you get a box of your books just like George McFly. You think I'm going back in that zoot suit? See, that zoot suit would have been totally cool in the 80s.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That would have been like what Hall and Oates are wearing in the Private Eyes video,
or like, do you think I'm going back in that Stop Making Sense David Byrne suit?
It's like a David Byrne suit, or like the Stray Cats or something. All that energy that you need, all those gigawatts. It's like, oh, the only way you can get it is a lightning strike, and how would you know where a lightning strike's going to be? And it's like he's got this.
The flyer tells him the exact time. Oh my God, 10:04 p.m.
Yeah, and in like the opening credits, you do see like the clock, like a little.
You know,
and you even see like Marty hanging from it.
Yeah, there's
like a little Marty model.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. They're like, I like how it centers on a giant clock. Like the ending is like a clock. Like they have to like focus on
it's just beautiful thematically, plot wise, exposition. You know, just beautifully structured, and you just wonder like, you know, how long did they spend on this script? And it's like sometimes lightning strikes. Like sometimes creative lightning strikes, and it's like, you know, you could spend like years and years working on a script and not end up with something like this. But I'm sure they didn't spend years and years. I'm sure it was just like maybe a year or less spent working on it. Everything
fell into place.
Yeah.
Like the like every choice they nailed it. Like by whether like the original Time Machine was supposed to be on like the bed of a truck or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it also involved like Coca-Cola.
I think it was like in one of the early drafts it was going to be a refrigerator.
Yes.
And they didn't want, you know, kids imitating that, getting trapped in a refrigerator. And then like I feel like the refrigerator scene in Indiana Jones 4 is kind of like a reference to that.
Oh yeah, because they were gonna they said they were gonna try to like the time machine was supposed to go into like a nuclear blast or something.
Okay.
They couldn't get the special effect. So
this is just so much better. Like having it be a vehicle rather than this stationary thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it just worked out. Like I guess they were thinking of like the police box from Doctor Who or something. That it's like this little stationary thing you walk into and then go through time.
Like the DeLorean. Like how was there ever a time where the DeLorean time machine wasn't a thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Like what?
You know, and this was like, this is how it was like in the 80s. Like, it was like one after another, these like amazing movies that were like nothing you've ever seen before, you know, just one after the other, all these great concepts, and it just felt like it was going to go on forever. Like, because it, you know, it was like you'd get a Star Wars movie, and then you get an Indiana Jones movie, you get something like Tron, you'd get Wrath of Khan, you'd get this, you get, you know, you get a Superman movie, you get, you know, all
It's
this
not stopping.
Yeah, and it's just never going to stop. And then like RoboCop comes out and stuff, and then it was like it just stopped. Like they're just like the you know, it was like
the iconic moments.
yeah, it just stopped, and then you had like a couple years later you'd have like, you know, the Batman movie, but that was kind of like an isolated, and you know, this kind of like era of just
You're right, like,
endless creativity just kind of like petered out at a point.
It's like every year, every summer, man, we're getting
multiple things like this. Yeah, you're gonna get like an E.T. and you're gonna get it fizzled out because it was like, it was just kind of like, it was a moment, you know, and it centered on like a fixed number, you know, a Gremlins, you know, like
oh
it
my
just
god,
centered on this like fixed number of people, and
the
I don't know
original
what
Terminator.
happened. Yeah, Terminator. Like again, yeah, like there was just like a magic, and then kind of it was like dormant for a little while, which like as a kid felt like an eternity. Like the time between RoboCop and Batman felt like an eternity, and then the time between like RoboCop and then the sort of 90s like Tarantino era or whatever felt like an eternity too, because that was kind of like reignited cinema a little bit, getting like another like injection of, you know.
I would have loved to have seen this like on its original run in the theater.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have seen it. Like my dad took all of us, like, you know, again, like my dad loved going to the movies, and you know, as a result, I got to see a lot of like great classic stuff, like in the theater, and kind of like I love the movies too. I love, you know, going to the movies, and you know, he had good taste. You know, there were a couple, like if he was into a movie, we'd go see it. So it's like he didn't want to see Tron, so we didn't see Tron. That was a bummer. I really wanted to see that. You know, there were a couple blind spots, but mostly his track record was pretty good.
What was the one movie you were talking about where?
Oh, Clash of the Titans?
Was that Clash of the Titans?
Where like everybody else went, but I stayed home because I was like, no, that looks way too scary. Seeing this in the theater at the end, where it's like, we gotta go to the, you know, that little epilogue.
Oh my god!
It's like, okay, sign me up. Like when's the next one happening? I want to see the next. Yeah,
another quote, like right at the very end. It's like, where we're going, we don't need roads.
We don't need roads. And they said that ending, it was kind of like an afterthought. They didn't even know if this thing was going to go straight to cable or whatever, you know, like they didn't know if it was going to make any money or be you know, but it was like, okay, that would be a fun way to end it, and then it was like massive hit, and then it's like, okay, there's definitely going to be a sequel, with or without you, there's going to be a sequel. And so then, you know, they started the story, and like when they came up with that ending, they didn't have like a story in mind. It was just like, oh, that would be fun. So now it's like, okay, we have this story set up where they have to go to the future, and like, we don't really want to do that movie. We don't want to do some movie that thinks, we want to do like another thing like this. So they continue where they left off, but then they get you out of that situation at their earliest convenience, because that is not the story they wanted to. They didn't want to do a future story. They wanted to get back to like the 50s and Hillvalley.
The future does feel kind of they're like, okay, we're going to shoot right in the square for like a day.
Yeah, I really liked, for a while, Back to the Future 2 was my favorite Back to the Future, because I loved the audacity of it. I loved visions of the future. I just loved it. The future is really hard to do, and I thought they did a great job. And I wish they would have spent more time in the future. Yeah. But the way they go back to the 50s is really cool too. Like I love the sort of like fourth wall aspect of it.
Yes.
And
seeing the shots that you have seen from different angles.
Yeah, that it's like, okay, sequels are rip-offs of the part one, so now we're going to do one where he literally goes back to the first movie. Like, it's so great. Yeah,
it's awesome. And I love his, like, he's wearing the leather jacket and he's like a fedora. Mm-hmm. He's got the walkie-talkie.
That would be cool if they like went back and digitally added the Michael J. Fox from Part 2 to Part 1.
Oh my god!
Like where you just see him here and there poking out. Or if they did like a Godfather saga kind of thing, where like Back to the Future saga, where it's in chronological order. So you have like the part 1 and part 2 scenes mixed. I guess yeah, it would start with Back to the Future Part 3. Like
I'm trying to do a George Lucas voice. It's like, I've been brought in specially by Robert. I've been invited by Robert Zemeckis to bring the vision they've always wanted to life.
Like I love that view of like of 20. It was 2015, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2015.
Which when 2015 came and went, it was kind of interesting. Oh, we're in the Back to the Future year.
What scared the shit out of me when I was little and still did was like Jaws was scary, and I thought that like 3D
The Jaws hologram
was the scariest thing in the world.
I agree. It was kind of like, oh, what would happen if I were approached by a Jaws hologram?
It's so scary. Jaws 19.
It's so funny because that is like a thing of like, oh, here's the millionth Jaws, and it's like in the future there's going to be a million Jaws movies. And you know, it's like Steven Spielberg's the producer, so it's like, ha ha ha, it's like a wink, and
I did
like,
this.
And making fun of himself or whatever. But like, Jaws did not have legs. Jaws did not stick around. Like if they saw like, oh yeah, here's Star Wars 12, that would have made like, you know, that would have been funnier. But like Jaws 19, Jaws didn't end up making it to 19. I think in Airplane 2, they had Rocky 32, Rocky 38, or Rocky 32, and it was like this old man with a poster of this old man with like
Airplane 2 had a nice Jaws joke too.
Yeah.
The very beginning, tail is going through the clouds like.
Yeah, Jaws was a sensation, but it didn't have the staying power because it is like
when it gets warmer, we might have to do our Jaws episode. But crack open some Narragansetts. I'm trying to crush them right after I drink them.
The apocalyptic 80s, like don't the 80s suck? Isn't it? Don't you wish it was still the 50s?
DeLorean gets like frosty whenever, and it's great too.
That is like a nice touch because it's not necessary like what, but it makes intuitive sense. You know?
Great choice on the DeLorean too. Like the metal like exterior reflects like light and like just looks interesting and like.
Yeah, and he wants to save Doc.
He gave him the letter, right?
Yeah, he gave him the letter, and Doc ripped up the letter, and yeah, he thinks he's gonna, you know, just so great. Like, I mean, every little bit, like, this is a well thought out, you know, every little detail, like they must have been high-fiving each other when they finished that script, because it just works.
Lone Pine Mall, he crushed the pine tree.
He watches a scene we already saw from a different angle, which ends up being the entirety of Back to the Future Part 2, but like, we got the seeds of that here.
They're like, let's expand.
And he sees himself. Some more time travel paradox stuff. Apparently, you can travel back to a time where you were. You know.
Yeah.
That the universe doesn't explode.
That looks just like Westworld Mall, man.
Yeah. Here's even today. Here's something you have to explain to kids because they crash into the photo mat, the little photo set. Like, what is that? Is that, you know, film sale? What's that mean? You know, that's what that is. It was you drop off your film, you take pictures, and you wouldn't see them instantly. They'd just be recorded on this roll of gelatin, and then you'd take this roll of gelatin to one of those places, and then come back. The next day, if you're lucky, like that was a real big development. 24-hour. Yeah. You know, you come back the next day and get your photos.
You didn't know what your photos looked like.
Sometimes they just give you a bunch of like pictures that were just completely black. Nothing. You know.
There was one. I still have a disposable camera that I haven't developed in like 30 years. I think my brother like took a picture of his butt, and I've been afraid to take it.
That you're gonna go to jail.
Yeah, so I never had it developed because I thought he.
It's gonna be on your permanent record.
Yeah, so I never developed.
And yeah, there he taped the letter back together. He did. Just all these great little payoffs and just a thoroughly well thought out space-time continuum story. Elizabeth Shue replaces the actress here who plays Marty's girlfriend.
Yes.
It's played by Elizabeth Shue in the next 2 minutes. Any explanation for that? Is it a Crispin Glover situation? Is it an Eric Stoltz situation? Like, what is it? Just like, you know, it's like, oh, we want this guy who's on like the #1 TV show and who's like this breakout star. We want him. See you later, Eric. And then it's like, oh, Elizabeth Shue is on fire. See you later. You know.
the girl. I do know the actor that was cast originally opposite Eric was then they let her go because they didn't want her to be taller than Michael J. Fox.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I assumed they just kind of like removed Eric Stoltz and like everybody else was this. It was Crispin Glover. It was the whole.
I think there was another
Yeah.
person.
Okay,
in there.
so his, that makes sense too, though. Like I know, like from like Star Wars and stuff, he talked about how he would sort of cast in threes. It wasn't like, okay, we found a Han Solo, we found a Luke Skywalker, and then we found a Princess Leia. It's like he needed to see how all three of them click together. So that's why it would, it's like it was weird to me, the idea of just taking out Eric Stoltz, but Crispin Glover still works. Whoa, our house looks totally 80s now. Whoa. Where before it just looked like a bomb hit it.
He's like, they're yuppies.
Now I don't know who this actor is who plays his brother, but he looks like John McEnroe.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. I saw him breaking a racket and also accosting a judge.
And in the initial version of this timeline, he's got that like classic McDonald's uniform, so great.
Yeah, brings back that's where you go to McDonald's and there would be like planters inside, like a lot of lush greenery in there.
And here's the Silver Fox George McFly.
There he is.
And they're frisky. They're still the flame is still there. And they got again David Byrne suits.
Yeah, he was like there was like a lamp. He's like leaning. He's like, I want to listen to my tape.
Now, who's the actress who plays Lorraine?
Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson. Like I heard like an interview with Leah Thompson. And it was like so depressing. She was saying that like, when she was in this movie, it was like so weird. She'd be all like made up, like old, and then at the end of the day, she'd just kind of like take off the stuff and she'd be young again. And like she said, like now she like looks in the mirror and like imagines herself but she can't take it off. And I was like, that was just like so like weird and depressing and I don't know like. But I can relate.
Yeah. Well, in the next episode, I'm coming in with a face. I'm getting a full facelift.
You're getting the Doc Brown.
The Doc Brown facelift.
Biff, has like he had like his sort of like 70s plaid leisure suit, and now he's got like what's it, Beastie Boys kind of
tracksuit. I always thought that was like Harold Ramis on the back.
It looks like Harold Ramis on the back. Yeah. George McFly author looks like Harold Ramis. This is like the movie where it's like, oh, trucks are cool.
Yeah,
I did not think I would have thought like see like a red, like some like Kit from Knight Rider, but red. Like that would be my idea of what you'd open up and see in your garage. But it's like, oh no, trucks are cool. Okay, I didn't duly noted.
Yeah, when I was little, my dad had like his blue like Chevy pickup. It had like a Rusty Jones. There was like sticker. I remember like. But I was like, no, this is a cool truck.
Yeah. Oh, here. And they are, ostensibly going on this camping trip to, I assume, have sex for the first time to sort of consummate the relationship, and maybe even conceive the kids that they have to go in the future to help.
Yeah, he's Marty's kid in Back to the Future 2 is one of the most great job to Michael J. Fox. Annoying characters. He's like, it drives me insane.
How about Mr. Fusion? I mean, how great! And this is all in part one. This is all in part Mr. Fusion, and again, like as a kid, your introduction to the idea of like fusion, so what a great science lesson this whole movie, and recycling too.
I know.
Recycle like green energy. It's like you could just take your garbage, put it in your car, and
power it.
I guess the closest thing we had to that was like, these sort of like biodiesel. Where you could take like fry oil from McDonald's or whatever.
The grease not gas movement.
Yeah, and put that in your car.
Or then there's the 80s. What is it? The Russian cold fusion.
Cold fusion. That you could create nuclear fusion in your refrigerator, and the car has at the end has like the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Jack Kirby thing of like the car where the wheels go and
my
become
God.
like hovercraft kind of things.
License plate, was it say out of time?
Yeah, out of time. Which we are now. That's the end of our Back to the Future episode. Unless you want to go into overtime and maybe cover the sequels a little bit.
Yeah.
When I saw Back to the Future 2, I thought, okay, we're just seeing the same exact footage, but it's like, no, it's like a reshot version with Elizabeth Shue now in the role.
Of Jennifer.
Yeah.
And it's weird too, because like, it's not like with like today with like sequels seem to come out sooner, it feels like. I don't know. But
Yeah, how long was the stretch? 'Cause
this was like 4 or 5 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like a very different person when this came out because, like 5 years in a kid's life, and because like, Back to the Future, I saw with my dad, like he took all of us. Back to the Future 2, I went to the theater by myself,
This was the first Back to the Future movie I saw in the theater.
Okay.
I saw 2 and 3 in the theater. I didn't see the first one in there.
And yeah, we did not have footage of Biff watching them fly away in the original, but like this is like a slight retelling.
A flying DeLorean.
I remember a flying DeLorean. Yeah, Biff is like back. Biff was vanquished in part 1, but it's like, okay, if we're gonna make sequels, then Biff has to be like reignited. So that little flame was like the reigniting of the villain Biff.
And Biff, a huge meaty role in this. He's like kind of like
he's central
to this one.
Like Doc's facelift that he takes off and he looks identical. I feel like that's kind of like a reference to like a thing that was real popular around this time of chemical peels. Remember chemical peels?
I might actually come in. I know I said a facelift, but I'm thinking about coming in doing a Cloris Leachman level peel.
Yeah, the peel. It's like I remember when that was like a new thing and it sounded really gross, where they would just like put like acid on your face. They put like a thin application of acid, and then it would make your face scab up.
Oh my God.
And then you'd peel the scab layer off, and then your face would be all refreshed. That was like the idea. But then people kept getting into they would get in their eyes, and then they'd have like eye damage, or the application there'd be too much of an application, and so.
It's like it's like, how could the idea of smearing acid on your face go south?
And so, yeah, we got these high-tech Nikes, and
I think they released like limited edition versions of the.
And did they automatically tighten themselves like that? Because that doesn't seem far-fetched.
I don't know. You know what though? Like the look of these shoes has kind of happened. Like the
that look is very very familiar. Yeah.
And there's these shoes. I don't know if they're out yet.
And that hat. I mean, that's
yeah.
totally a thing.
There's these shoes where you step into them and they like close on your feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so much stuff on Star Trek. Like all this Star Trek stuff becomes, the iPhone or whatever. In this, there's like a gag of like, come to Vietnam, come to beautiful Vietnam, like Vietnam tourism. Which, back then was like an absurd idea, but then in the early 2000s, that became a real thing too, like Vietnam as a tourist destination.
Doc's got the clear tie.
Yeah, and it's like extrapolating, like, okay, what's the fashion going to be like? What are things like in the future? And of course, when you try to predict the future, there's like certain things that like you overestimate, where you think we're going to be so much further ahead than we really end up being. But then there's things that you underestimate, where it's like, oh, this thing that I didn't think was going to change very much really changed a lot.
There was a movie, Runaway, with Tom Scioli.
Yeah, with like robots.
And they nailed so many of so much tech in that. There's like drones that are like spot on, and there's like iPads in that. I was like, man, they really got that one.
And Gene Simmons as the villain.
I'm like, why is that robot's tongue hanging off? I was like, shock me.
They go, so in this, like, he goes to like the 80s cafe or whatever. And again, that seemed absurd, but it's like, and like I remember there was a place called Nifty 50s when I was a kid.
I never
so like
that one.
The 50s, this was like in Philadelphia. I don't know that it came this far to Pittsburgh, but like we had Nifty 50s. So it was like the 50s themed diner was a thing, and because diners were like sort of so associated with the 50s, and then this like 80s cafe, like we don't really see that now. There isn't like a totally 80s restaurant, because I guess like the 80s aren't like, if the 80s were associated with a restaurant, or like it would be like sushi. I think it would be like, come get 80s sushi, you know.
That in the 80s, like sushi was like, whoa.
Well, it was very exotic and like, yeah, like, whoa, what is this stuff? I don't know, but you know, yeah, it was very like you know, oh, I know somebody who had sushi once, you know, it's like that kind of thing. Where now it's like, you know, like I just had sushi yesterday, like it's,
or
you know.
Somebody's got a bottle of Evian water, and it's like, what is? Oh my god!
Which maybe in the 50s that was like Italian food. Like, how do you feel about Italian food? Let's go get some Italian food. Oh, Italian food, I don't know. All that red sauce and all that garlic. Oh, no thanks. Yeah, anything with Jaws was. There was like an episode of Different Strokes. It was like towards the end of the series where like Danny Cooksey joins the cast and Dixie Carter, and like they go to Hollywood, and then they go to like Universal Studios or something, and like Arnold and Willis are like standing next to this pool, and then like Jaws is in the pool, and like I would just I would just keep thinking about that. Now look at what's in the movie in this. So like,
oh my, I had that video game.
Yeah, Burger Time, Jaws. You know they, and again like
Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
the NES, and like a like a Macintosh, like a black and white Macintosh was still like a current computer, and then a like NES stuff. I mean, come on, like NES is like, you know, the Wild Gunman. And then all this Max Headroom stuff is pretty cool.
Oh yeah, a lot of Reagan action.
Yeah,
he's like, it's morning in America.
Reagan and Michael Jackson. But like, so we don't have like 80s cafes, but like we do have like, you know, you go to like a thrift store that'll be called like, you know, Totally 80s or something. So like when that stuff started showing up, that was kind of weird. Like, oh wow, we're in Back to the Future territory where like 80s nostalgia. Like when 80s nostalgia first started, it was kind of like, wait, is it okay to be nostalgic about the 80s? And then forget about when 90s nostalgia started. It's like, okay.
Oh yeah, and then there's like, it feels like there's a whole group of folks that are like, they're like only a true 90s kid, but they're referring to stuff from like 2004 or like 2001. It's like, you're way off. Like what? Like a true 90s kid.
Young Biff is a bully. Old Biff is a bully. But then like middle-aged Biff is, yeah, like kowtowing and vanquished. And then old man Biff the way that Marty ignites his father's heroism when he goes back to the 50s. Old man Biff, when he goes back to the 50s, reignites Biff's, you know, evil.
Biff, what a piece of shit.
And then Griff with his cybernetic implants that are defective.
I don't know. I don't remember this happening in the first one, but in the second one and the third one, Marty McFly's like Achilles heel was like being called chicken.
That was introduced. That was introduced as a thing in the sequels. That was not in the original. Yeah, and even like seeing this as a kid, it felt shoehorned.
Yeah, I'm like, really, Marty?
Yeah, this is not a perfect script that like Back to the Future 1 was. This does have some clunky exposition, and that's one of them. Now, you know, playing Wild Gunman for the NES and like using the zapper and stuff, and then those kids being unimpressed and just saying, oh, it's like a baby toy or whatever.
I'm convinced that dude. I thought one of them looks like is that Elijah Wood there on the left?
Could be, yeah. Looks like him.
And also, this is like a nice lead in into the next one.
Yes.
A little like breadcrumbs.
That's totally Elijah.
Isn't that Elijah Wood?
Yeah, totally.
It's like dropping something. Got Wheel of Fortune on in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is. You know, let's have some totally 80s cafes.
I'm into it.
Griff's cyberpunk gang.
Yeah, so cool. Billy Zane is in there. He definitely is in the crew whenever they go back to the 50s.
But he's part of the 50s, Billy Zane. So he was in the first one, or he's in the 50s crew in part 2?
You know what? I think he was in the first one, and he's in this one because he's in, like
they bring him back.
They bring him back.
It's funny, they don't bring back Crispin Glover. They don't bring back Marty's girlfriend, but they do bring back Billy Zane, who you could have totally replaced and nobody would have known.
I love the hoverboard. Now was there's like a urban legend or some conspiracy? Isn't it the Mattel urban legend about like suppressing the hoverboard or something?
Yeah. Now,
what is the deal with
now
that?
that was okay. Like when I was a kid, they had when this movie was coming out, they had a making of Back to the Future Part 2 documentary that was on TV, hosted by Kirk Cameron, because he was like the closest they could get to Michael J. Fox, to host this thing.
Yeah, he was setting up the program, but he kept talking about, "Are you ready for the rapture?"
Yeah.
He kept saying that over and over again.
You don't want to be left behind when this movie comes out. You want to be there because you're going to be in rapture when you see it. So
I think all the blood vessels in my face are bursting.
So like in that documentary, it was like Robert Zemeckis talks about how maybe I'm remembering this wrong, or maybe I don't know if I'm
But
remembering
it sounds
right.
like it.
But it was like they did like a making of Back to the Future documentary, and Robert Zemeckis in it was talking about the hoverboard, and he was saying like, oh yeah, the hoverboard, like it's been around for a while, but due to safety, like they haven't released them because they're afraid they'll be too dangerous. But yeah, it's real technology, blah blah. And then like later on, he admitted that, oh yeah, that was a kayfabe or whatever.
Yeah,
that was
a work.
That was a work that like he wanted you to see this movie and like really believe that Marty McFly's on a hoverboard. So he said that it was a real thing when it wasn't.
So that was the
genesis of it. And then and then just watching it, it's like, okay, some of these scenes are special. Like you're not seeing, but it was like wires and whatnot that got erased in post production.
And I appreciated, even as a little kid, sometimes in movies you'll see them like going to a toy store and you won't see any real toys. I liked that it had the Mattel logo huge on there. I'm like, oh my god.
Don't you know hoverboards don't work on water?
Oh no!
You mojo.
My hoverboard stopped. Why? Marty, you fool. Don't you know that hoverboard don't work on water? You jagoff. You're going to get your pants wet falling in that water there.
Yeah, Griff gets out his superboard, the Mad Dog or whatever it's called, Bulldog.
Oh yeah.
He's got a super
little rockets on it.
Hoverboard. The Pit Bull, that's it. But yeah, this little glimpse of the future, and then you get I wanted
awesome.
more. I wanted more of it, but it is like the way the movie's it works really well. Like we get a little bit of the future before a little appetizer before we go back to the 50s setup.
We get a little dystopia action.
Yeah, that's true. Like we don't just get the future and the past. We get this like parallel universe, this like alternate timeline, this like worst case scenario, like nightmare present. It's not the future. It's it's 1985, but like where everything's gone horribly wrong.
That scene where Marty fell in the water is like for me one of the scariest scenes in the movie.
Because Jaws is still nearby.
Jaws is still nearby. But I hate if I go to like an amusement park or anything, I refuse to get like wet, fully clothed. Like that is truly like a living nightmare.
That's fine.
Like the splash zone, you won't catch me there. Like the thought of walking through an amusement park the whole day like wet, it's like, and you start drying and it works its way backward to your purple underpants.
I was at Kennywood once and saw like a woman who had just gone on the Pittsburgh plunge and was soaked and just like drip and like mascara running, and like I saw her like trying to light a cigarette, trying to light a wet cigarette, and I'm like, that's like the saddest thing I've ever seen. And Cubs win the World Series. That was another because it's like, oh well, that's never gonna happen, and then it happens. What was the name of the dog?
Einstein. And Copernicus, and his dog in the 50s is Copernicus.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't have a dog. Like Einstein wasn't in the first one, right?
Einstein was in the first one.
Okay, so that's the dog that Einstein's the dog that's there when Marty plugs in and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's like a fun little thing having the photo that changes, and then the newspaper cover where the picture changes, and then you have the news drone.
USA Today gets some
USA Today news drone. photographing.
I also love Doc Brown's Brett the Hitman Hart glasses. Now, was Brett had to have been wearing those pre of this movie? The excellence of execution.
I don't know. I would guess that this came first, but yeah, I don't know. Because they're completely opaque glasses. And then he takes the hoverboard with him so that he can use it later in the movie. And I don't know, does the hoverboard get any play in Back to the Future 3?
Yeah, he uses it to say, like, during the climactic train scene. I think he blessed the hoverboard out to save like Mary Steenburgen.
Okay, that's what you got to do. That's why you got to film these two together, is because you got to have all this stuff pay off. Now, Back to the Future 3, it's like the one I've watched the least. It's the one I like the least. Maybe somebody out there like can make a great case for Back to the Future 3. It's just like, to me, it's like the first two are like real fast paced and fun and boom, bam, bam, and a million, and then the third one is just so slow in the West, you know.
I'm a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I just like it. I think they just wanted to make like a Western.
Yeah, they felt like, because nobody was making Westerns anymore, you know, like the Western was like this genre that they like grew up with and was completely dead, but it's like, but it wasn't like a fun like spaghetti Western. It was like a boring like Hollywood Western, you know?
Yeah, like I did like the idea of like the DeLorean. It's like, how are they going to get back?
Yeah, they had a little bit of steampunk in it.
Yeah,
and they had like you know, and it's like you got ZZ Top and they're playing those Colonial Williamsburg drums.
I love that. And then like this one, we got Sammy Hagar's "Can't Drive 55" at some point. I also had forgotten a lot about it before the last part I watched it, because I was like, how the hell is Marty going to get out of the 50s? And it's like, Doc, he buried the time machine in like a mine shaft for them to like go and unearth. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you could come up with those kind of things. Like now they after doing the first one, they have like their PhD in time travel story planning of like, okay, we can plan this, and like time travel, like with like the Terminator sequels and stuff, like and even like the Terminator TV series, like time travel, you know, the science of telling a time travel story has like progressed to such a point where it's like, don't even bother doing a time travel story if you're not gonna think out all these things on like a micro level.
Special effects look good.
Yeah, they some like early CGI and not looking too bad. You know that, you know, like in a good screenplay, you're sort of like, you know, your worst enemy is yourself, and you're kind of like undone by your own, you know, whatever. So it's like they try to set up that thing of like Marty's pride and like not being called chicken as a thing, but it's like it's, you know, it's like his greed, like this like 80s greed that was like the happy ending to the first one. It's like his 80s greed is his undoing, because he has
Gray's Almanac.
The Gray's Almanac, and then you know, Old Man Biff finds it and like kind of you know,
that rat bastard.
Yeah.
That officer, Mary Ellen Trainor, Robert Zemeckis' wife, rest in peace. She's great. She's in. She's like the mom from the Goonies.
Okay. So she's one of the future police officers.
Yeah.
Now this is like, you're kind of getting at like different, you know, psychological ideas that you can kind of like. You had like the Oedipus thing, and then you had like the, you know, oh, my dad's a dork, or my mom, you know, and then this one, it's like for Elizabeth Shue, it's like, I'm old, you know, like seeing your old, you know, being sort of like horrified by your old self, and seeing how pathetic your wedding is. Elizabeth Shue's character, they could have done more. I think it's firmly established that they could have done a lot more.
Yeah, like
her. She gets her moment here, but yeah.
The rest of the movie, she's unconscious in a dumpster.
Yes,
so
it's
like,
yeah.
I was reading the screenplay. I'm like, this role is sick. They're like, for 3/4, you're gonna be unconscious, drugged on a doorstep.
Yeah, maybe like the original actress was like, I don't want to do this sequel. Yeah, here's upside down, not Crispin Glover. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, yeah, come on, you get a guy who's wearing a Crispin Glover mask, and you know, and you think you're gonna get away with, you know, and it's not like Crispin Glover is like this kind of like, you know, forgettable face. It's like this, like very, like very unique.
Yeah.
Maybe if they had cast the guy from Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, Robert Carradine.
Yeah, and then like I think they could have gotten away with it because people would have been like, oh yeah, isn't that the guy from the first one? Yeah, like I think they could have gotten away with it because like he would have looked like himself. They wouldn't have done any prosthetic. It would have been like a real recasting of the role. But yeah, this is thumbs down to this.
It's Crispin Glover in the flesh.
This is like the movie. This is why they like actors started putting clauses in their contracts of like you can't put my CGI likeness in a movie without like because this is what planted the idea. It's like, oh wow, they'll just put like a clone of you in a movie.
Yeah, they'll rip you off.
Yeah, it was kind of like one step forward, two steps back. Like okay, things got better for the McFlys, but then they got worse again. And George McFly got to live in this little bubble of where things were good for the McFlys, but now they get undone again.
Whenever he steals his DeLorean, I'm like, you son of a bitch.
In the time between Back to the Future 2 and Back to the Future 3, it's like, why did you make this movie? It had such a good ending, and now you've ruined everything for all these characters. Now this thing of like the dehydrated Pizza Hut pizza.
Oh my god.
And their little hydroponic garden.
His like one arm was hanging down before.
Yeah.
I was like, please pull your sleeve up.
Yeah, and she gets like one moment where she's like face to face with herself, and she freaks out. I don't think anybody else gets. Is there a scene where Marty sees himself?
I can't remember.
Like up close. I think the closest we get to that is like Marty seeing, Michael J. Fox as his son face to face.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think, like she's the one who gets the face to face scene with herself, her older self.
And then doing a little FaceTime a little bit with
Yeah.
Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
Needles.
Yeah.
Flat screen TVs.
Yeah, and watching multiple channels at once. Like that was kind of like a thing for a minute,
Yeah.
Like
Pip.
Yeah. Now it's just like, okay, you got what's going on TV, and then you got what's going on in your hand. You got your thing, and then you got your phone, and that's your multiple screen. Yeah, I like Biff's cane with the fist, the hello McFly fist. So like, yeah, we got Back to the Future 2, got Back to the Future 3, the Western. He's eating the food with buckshot in it. He's drinking rusty water.
He's dressed in like a 50s a cowboy like stunt spectacular outfit.
Right, yeah, like he's all duded up, and it is like, okay, the past is never exactly how you remember it or how you think it, it doesn't live up to, so it's like, yeah, he's dressed like a movie cowboy. He's dressed like the singing cowboy or whatever, and he goes back to the real Old West, and everybody's all grungy and.
The fuel line breaks on the DeLorean, so there's no power to drive it back. So they have to I think push it with a train.
Right, a train that where the engine has a number of explosions that kind of get it fast. So you basically have to destroy this train in order to get it to get the DeLorean to go fast enough.
And Mary Steenburgen is in that, and I think she's apparently supposed to die, but they save her, and then she falls in love with Doc, and then Biff is Mad Dog Tannen.
Yeah.
Who we see in Back to the Future. We see him in this one. They're in the museum to himself. Mm-hmm. They're he was related to Mad Dog Tannen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, more breadcrumbs, more planting seeds. I couldn't relate to the story with the idea of having relatives who were here during the Old West, we were in Italy, when all that was going on. So I couldn't relate to that. Maybe there's some people who can relate to that and we're like, oh yeah,
Italiano.
it would be a spaghetti western.
Yeah, in real. Yeah. And then this also you also have the iconic creepy kid on the train.
Right? Yeah, you showed that to me. I had never heard of that. Yeah, Doc's, weird kids. Father like son. The Needles you know, when he comes up and it says, like, it talks about his interests and stuff at the bottom of the screen, I mean, that's all very, you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Now, a fax machine, that's the thing. I guess, well, in 2015, there were still faxes, and people were still using faxes, not commonly, but there were occasionally times where it's like, you'd have to, like, fax a form somewhere or something.
Needles kept saying to old Marty, he was like, I'll see you under the bridge. She's like, give me 1 hot minute. By the way, fight like a brave.
Like, when they restore the good future and the good present and all that kind of stuff, I guess, like, Marty, you know, grows up to be like Bill and Ted in Wild Stallions or whatever. He grows up to be some, like, rock star, and he wasn't able to do that because of his car accident.
Because I see, he still got the amp. Here we go.
Yeah, this is the scene where people get to see. Now, that haircut, I mean, that...
Yeah.
Some good shtick there with Elizabeth Shue's eye is crossing as she falls.
I read that instead of Einstein, at some point in the script, Doc was supposed to have a chimp with him named Shemp.
Okay, I like it.
Which I like that.
Yeah, I guess that would be a little harder to wrangle, you know, getting a dog.
They're like, we have to cancel the production. Shemp pulled Marty's hands off and peeled his face back.
This is another, like, deleted scene that, like, there was a deleted scene where old man Biff, like, disappear from existence.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't even...
He disappears, but the bit of his cane that stayed in the DeLorean doesn't.
Oh yeah, they find that later.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I was like, I never put together why there was a piece of the key.
Because he's, like, in pain, and they don't explain. Like, it's just like, oh, I guess time travel is too much for him. But it's like he's disappearing from the space-time continuum, which I guess everybody is going to disappear at a certain, you know, here because because George McFly he'll disappear, you know.
Yeah. I guess Bob Gale and Zemeckis are pretty. They have, like, a lot of control over it. That's why we just got the movies and the ride, and, like, we really, we
haven't seen any sequels or prequels or reboots, reimaginings.
I swear there was like a Saturday. I feel like there was like the Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, was there? Okay, I don't remember. I know there was a Teen Wolf cartoon.
I remember that. Oh my god! And love it.
You know, I remember, like, Michael J. Fox being on a talk show, like, not too long after, when it was still conceivable that he could do, like, a sequel, and just talking about, like, oh, are you ever going to do, like, another Back to... And he was like, if they do another Back to the Future, it's going to be, like, there's going to be some 12-year-old or whatever, like, hey, Doc, when are we doing that? He's like, it's not going to be me. I'm not doing it. So that was kind of,
He's putting that to bed.
Yeah, he put that to bed, a long time ago.
Tell you what, I would kill to be in a feature film where, like, large portions of the movie I would be, like, sleeping or, like, unconscious or
Yeah, because she's basically, so from this point on, like, she was unconscious for, like, a lot of, like, the first part of the movie, and then now she is going to be asleep until like the end, like for the next, like, 4 hours of film.
Yeah, doesn't she just awaken?
Yeah, she wakes up and, like, the whole world has, like, rearranged itself around her.
They're like, he's got an Oscar nomination for playing guys taking a nap.
She's like, I passed on being in Karate Kid 2, so I could be. When they made this sequel, now it's like, okay, 1985 isn't the present anymore. 1985 isn't the present anymore. Now the 80s are the past. We're in the 90s now, and the 80s are already starting to look a little stale. But they had to kind of, like, reverse engineer the 80s. So it's like, okay, here's a Michael Jackson poster. Now that Michael Jackson poster, I remember at this time, was so out of style. Like, where he's got, like, the little sweater and stuff. Yeah. Like, he was in, like, the leather, what's it called, like, bad outfit, by this point. And the Doritos bag, like, Doritos didn't look like that anymore either. So it was like they're already having nostalgia for what was the present when they made it. Like you said, it was like a pretty long time between the sequels, between part 1 and part 2. And then it was like a couple months between part 2 and part 3. He thinks he's in some kind of evil future, but he's gone sideways in time. He's in the Biff dystopia.
Oh yeah, we see Strickland here, but he's clad in like a bulletproof vest and with a shotgun.
Yeah, Strickland is in like Road Warrior mode.
Got a huge bandolier of like shotgun shells.
This parallel universe still makes me sad, and to think that okay, yeah, he did fix time and stuff, but that this version
Even
exists somewhere in some parallel universe that is not part of our timeline anymore.
It is depressing.
Yeah,
it's
depressing.
like, please, let's free everyone from this.
And Strickland looks like he could be like in like a Road Warrior.
Oh yeah, he's still in his Masters of the Universe movie mode as for the cop from
Biff's temple that he built to himself. This gaudy, disgusting, polluting temple to his own hubris. Back to the Future trilogy, another classic. I mean, the third one, not a huge fan, but it works. It ties it. Like, you know, the third one is very often the weak link anyway, but it does the job. It you know, closes things up and you know, completes the circle.
And the when the DeLorean. Oh, there we go.
Buford, Mad Dog Tannen. This is just an incidental detail. Don't worry about it.
When the DeLorean gets blown up by a train at the end of this on the train tracks in part 3, very much like another thing that keeps popping up on the Total Recall show, Blue Thunder. The helicopter, they park it on the train tracks to destroy it in Blue Thunder, and they park the DeLorean like on the tracks, blow that up.
You know, like, just having seen like the movie Casino and stuff, I feel like Biff's winning streak would have gotten him some like really bad attention.
De Niro would have tried to cut his hand off with a circular saw in the back room, or beat him to death and leave him in a cornfield. There's Billy Zane.
Now Billy Zane, okay, so he's part of the old man gang. So he was part of his gang as a kid in the 50s, and now he's part of his old man gang. Okay.
He's like Red from Elvis's Memphis Mafia.
Yeah, there's a very like Elvis, vibe.
Like he's like, "You're the best, Elvis."
In the wedding scene, she's got like the pillbox hat, and it makes me think of like Jackie Kennedy marrying Aristotle Onassis, where it's like she's married to this sort of like, you know, heroic figure of you know, JFK or whatever, and then he dies, and then she has to marry this like troll. So yeah, Back to the Future. I'm sure you've seen it. It's great. You love it. We love it.
We thought we were out, but they pull us back.
They pull us back in. Yeah.
That's the power of love.
I don't know if the world could have taken a Back to the Future 4. Like, I shudder to think what kind of other like horrors it would have predicted.
I know everyone's like, it's like, you ruined my childhood. But I'm glad that there's no. I mean, Back to the Future. Just leave it as it is.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would love to see you know, these themes played with again. Maybe somebody who like loved Back to the Future and was inspired by it could create their own sort of, you know, nostalgic, futuristic time travel sort of thing that is completely original, but like inspired by what this, you know.
Yeah, you're right. Like Back to the Future 4. Now that would destroy the space-time continuum.
We've been watching the Back to the Future episode of Total Recall. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, and Fantastic Four Grand Design.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Tom Scioli.
You can follow me on Instagram at cinema_tune. Looks like we're out of time.